Awesome. In the interest of time, let's go ahead and start. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then we can dive on in, beginning with a quick PowerPoint about who we are. There we are. So hi, everyone. My name is Michael Avtonomoff, and I'm a solutions consultant here at Blueshift. I want to thank you all so much for joining me today in our demo series. As the title suggests, today we're going to be discussing the importance of leveraging many different channels in a coordinated fashion, and how Blueshift, of course, enables this robust coordination across all channels seamlessly. So we'll also touch on the uplift expected as a result of taking on an omni-channel strategy in lieu of a more traditional multi-channel strategy where all of these disparate channels may not be designed to cooperate and intelligently engage the user. So this is, of course, more important today than ever, given how user behavior has rapidly changed over this past year to become increasingly reliant on digital channels for making purchases. Customers today are, of course, inundated with messaging and information from dozens of brands. So we're going to be exploring how to intelligently coordinate every single one of these touch points with your customers, and then, of course, intelligently react how they in turn respond to those messages. So the agenda for today is very straightforward. We're going to briefly spend 5 minutes discussing who Blueshift is and why we'll be able to help you more easily engage with your users in your omni-channel campaigns. The main goal in building out an omni-channel strategy is to ensure that a customer's interaction with our brand is consistent and seamless, no matter the channel. Furthermore, we also want to ensure that every single message that we send is contextually aware and relevant at time of the message sent. So whether it's a social media post, a digital ad, or a visit to a store, the key thing is that no part of the customer journey feels out of place to the end user. From there, we're going to spend most of today's sessions inside the actual platform, looking at how easy it is to build out these omni-channel campaigns, and then, of course, evaluating their performance by either channel, recommendation used, creative, or any other grouping that you can imagine. I'm also going to share with all of you some key insights gleaned by an empirical study that we conducted on billions of messages sent via Blueshift. So now I'd like to share a little bit background with everyone regarding who Blueshift is. As a sales engineer by trade, I promise you I have a strong aversion to giving lengthy PowerPoints. So I'll keep this super brief, and we'll spend most of our time in the actual platform. Now it's time for the NASCAR slide. So Blueshift provides a robust SmartHub CDP that helps brands intelligently scale customer engagement on every channel. And it's all powered by our built-in AI and machine learning tech. So as you can see here, we work with a number of different brands across a variety of industries. We're also backed by some of the world's leading investors. We've been recognized by a number of major research and advisory firms, such as Gartner and Forrester. And our platform has also been voted on and validated by our customers as a leader in the CDP and marketing automation space on G2 Crowd. And then finally, we also ensure the security of everyone's data so that you're confident in knowing that we'll always be ahead of the curve in terms of meeting compliance and local regulation, such as with GDPR and CCPA. In terms of flexibility, Blueshift partners with all of your favorite data platforms, tag management systems, and other third-party vendors so that marketers like yourselves can seamlessly connect and integrate with all of your existing systems. So now that we've talked a little bit about who we are, let's dive into, at a high level, how Blueshift works. So Blueshift is going to take your first-party and third-party customer data about both known as well as anonymous users from your various data sources, and then we're going to create individual user profiles and enhance them with important information. Blueshift uses AI to make predictions about your customers, including predicting the likelihood of purchase, what products to recommend, when to send these messages, and of course, where to engage with your users. So by combining this data with Blueshift's AI and omni-channel journeys, we make it really easy to deliver these one-to-one personalizations everywhere. And then of course, beyond that, Blueshift seamlessly captures all customer interactions from those personalized messages and then uses it to continuously and automatically improve predictions so that the customer experience is always relevant and up to date. I promised you a brief PowerPoint, and I intend to deliver on that. So now let's go ahead and dive into the actual product demo. We'll take a look at how we actually build out these omni-channel campaigns. So diving in, first things first, I want to draw your attention to the left-hand side here. We're kicking things off just by looking intuitively enough at a campaign. And then specifically, we're taking a look at a specific type of campaign called a segment triggered campaign. So As it sounds, this just means when a user meets our segment criteria, they enter into this campaign and can qualify for any of the subsequent messages. Beyond segment triggered campaigns, we also have support for API triggered, one-time send, scheduled, as well as event-based triggers. So however you guys intend to architect your campaigns, we make it really simple to accommodate. So now, having chosen our start date, chosen the segment of users that we want to target, we're then going to enter into this campaign. And so here we can see that we have originally 3 different paths that a user can follow down. And so as part of this omni-channel experience, we not only want to have these distinct paths biased towards whatever channel a user has an affinity towards, but then we also want to combine that and add some context whenever we send messages leveraging other channels, even if it's not a user's preferred channel. So first things first, just a little background. Whenever someone enters into one of these journeys, we do our evaluation top to bottom, left to right. So first things first, when a user enters this campaign, we're going to evaluate, do they qualify to receive this email message? So here we have some sort of time delay, but the actual evaluation comes down here under these conditions. So all we're saying is if a user has a channel affinity for email, let's send them an email series coupled with a few other channels. If they do not meet that segment criteria, we're then going to move to the right and do that same evaluation for this push notification. Otherwise, we're going to continue to move to the right until they do meet that segment criteria, and we'll send them an SMS. So this is wonderful. We're taking a look at some of the metrics. Blueshift is automatically going to handle attribution. You're seeing a nice preview of us embedding recommendations that we also allow you to easily create. But of course, we've talked about wanting to build omni-channel. So of course, that necessarily involves using other channels as part of a series. So in order for us to do that, anywhere we see this plus sign, we make it really simple to just add an additional message or what we call a trigger. So let's go ahead and scroll to the bottom of this email. And one thing I never like about demos is when everything's pre-built, it feels a little smoke and mirrorish. So what I want to do is just build this out live for you. So what we're going to do is hit that add trigger button, and then we're going to be presented with a series of different channels that we can leverage. So of course, out of the box, we provide the fundamental for email, push, in-app, as well as SMS. But I want to draw your attention to all of the different partners, all of the different third-party vendors that we can easily interface with as part of this campaign. So let's say beyond sending these messages, I also want to run some paid media campaigns targeting a specific subset of users that have abandoned their cart, or they're in a certain age range, or they have a predictive score suggesting that they have at least a 30% chance of ultimately making that purchase in the coming weeks. I can add that logic here and easily interface with one of those paid media providers, such as Criteo, just by choosing that right here and selecting a template that I want to use. And then finally, if you see a bunch of these vendors, but you're wondering, well, how do I interface with someone or a vendor that does not actually have this pre-existing cloud app? What we can do is just come down here to custom cloud app. So no matter who we want to interface with, what provider or message sender we want to, Blueshift is going to make that really easy to orchestrate all from this holistic view. But then to the point of building out omnichannel, let's just go ahead and run through building out a push notification. So we've already established that this user has a bias towards email. That is their preferred channel. That's something that Blueshift automatically computes based upon how they engage with messages, the activity they take after engaging with those messages. But we also want to throw in other different channels. So let's go ahead and select a push, and then let's build this out live. So the first step is just giving it a name. I'm going to get really creative today and just call this my push. From there, I want to draw your attention to the top right-hand corner. This is where we can enable advanced settings. I assume if you're on this call, you're somewhat savvy or at least interested in some of the more complex settings. So let's turn that on. Pardon me, I got a little bit of a cough today. So from there, we're going to choose the time delay that we want to assign this message. So let's give this a modest 2-day delay. Then up next, we can choose a feature that we call day parting. So day parting allows you to only send at certain times of the day. And a little bit of context, or the story I like to tell here, is that Starbucks very famously has been trying to, or at least was historically promoting their Frappuccino happy hour. So of course, early in the mornings, the coffee shop's doing well, lots of revenue, lots of customers. But later in the day, that tends to fall off. So they wanted to engage with their users, give them a discount, try and drive them into the stores later in the day by alerting them, hey, Frappuccino happy hour is today at 3 p.m. Come on in. Unfortunately, for whatever reasons, they sent out many of these messages to users at 8 p.m., at midnight, at 3 a.m., saying, hey, come in today for Frappuccino happy hour. And of course, that's not particularly timely. So here we can see an example of that jumping into the reputable Business Insider, my favorite source for all things marketing news. And we can see some examples of consumers responding to not receiving these messages at a time that's relevant to them. So sending out a message at 8 p.m. saying, hey, join us today, anytime after 3 p.m., not particularly relevant or timely. And so that's exactly the scenario that day parting is going to prevent. What we can do is just by clicking on there and then selecting user's time zone, we can ensure that this message is only going to send out at times of day that are relevant to the user. And what's so nice here is that Blueshift is doing this calculation. We're inferring what user or what time zone the user is in. So this is really nice in that I don't have to worry about time zones. If someone's traveling the country or across the country in a different time zone, we'll know about this and of course apply these selections where appropriate. So here we've added some sort of day parting to ensure this message doesn't send out at the wrong time. From there, this is where we can add some conditions. So unlike that first message that I showed you, we're allowed to add some message engagement filters here based upon how a user interfaces with that previous message. So this is important. I want to be mindful, especially in the scenario of an abandoned cart, of not messaging a user saying, hey, finalize your purchase and I'll give you 10% off, particularly if they have already made that purchase. So those are some of the options that we have from here. So I'm just going to ensure that my user has not actually transacted. I don't want to message them saying, hey, you forgot your cart, come on back, even though you made a purchase. Beyond that, we can also add any sort of filtering criteria here. So let's say I want to target users with a certain predictive score, suggesting that they're likely to actually finalize this purchase. So those are my high value users. Or let's say I want to target users with a certain average order value. We make that really simple to target based upon any historical user behavior or any user data that we have, whether that be from first or third parties. As long as it exists in Blueshift, we can easily segment off of it. And then the final step here is just selecting the creative that we want to use. So I think I should have a few nice creatives here. What better way to engage with my user than to use a push notification that leverages a recommendation of recently viewed products. Now, of course, I could also build out a recommendation of items that a user has added to cart, but ultimately didn't transact upon. But this is just an example. But then, of course, if you're noticing something missing, we don't want to just send out a single iteration of this message. We always want to be testing. We always want to be optimizing. And so we can easily turn this into an A/B test just by hitting this add another creative button. So this allows us to add an additional creative and then, of course, assign a certain percentage of users to randomly enter into this variant and receive this. I might have botched the recommendation there. Let's see if it generates for Android. There we are. So put in some Android copy, but seemingly forgot it on iOS. So I want to draw your attention here. Here, we've assigned a certain percentage of users to a variant. So as users qualify for this message, we're going to randomly assign 60% of those users to receive this creative you see right here. Otherwise, if you're in that 40%, we're going to randomly send you this, this creative right here. So we make it really easy to A/B test, optimize. And as I'm going to show you shortly when we jump into insights, we can see which of these variants is more performant. And then, of course, we also have support for winning variant optimization. So what that allows you to do is simply select a metric that you want to drive towards or optimize for, such as revenue generated. And then what we'll do is as users enter into these two variants, we're going to see which of the variants actually drives more of that metric that you want, such as revenue. And then we'll start funneling more and more users into that higher performing variant. Now, of course, no limits in terms of the amount of creatives I can build. So if I want to add another, I think this one should have a recommendation scheme inside it. There we are. And so I can just assign another percentage of users to receive that variant. And then all I have to do is if I want to make any modifications to the UTM params, we automatically assign those. So if you're unfamiliar with UTM params, no issues there. These are automatically generated. We're just going to hit that create trigger button and we're going to see it's created. So you might be asking yourself, well, where are we drawing these recommendations from? As I alluded to earlier, we've built that out very quickly in about 5 minutes in our recommendation studio. And then we're specifically previewing the recommendation for this user as specified right here. So this is so nice because the recommendations are going to be tailored to every single user. And we can, of course, preview that before time of send. So just taking a step back, we've now added an additional channel focused on push to follow up with this email series. Of course, we can do more of the same. The idea here is that we're going to intelligently figure out what is the best performing channel and bias the messaging series towards that channel while simultaneously leveraging these other channels so that our users have a holistic engagement experience. We're messaging them, we're being contextually aware. I'm cognizant of the fact that I've already sent this user an email, and I'm also aware that they have not transacted. So to my earlier point, really simple for us to have this context to make sure we're messaging users at an appropriate time. And then of course, all of these evaluations are done at time of message send. So there's no sort of batch job happening where, oh, well, they completed it 23 hours ago, or they transacted 23 hours ago and our system hasn't updated. All of these evaluations are done at time of message send in real time. Then of course, if I want to add additional channels, as I showed you earlier, really simple for me to do. Combine all these channels and take a look at some of the performance later on once we jump into insights. So now that we've covered out how we can build out these omni-channel experiences, how we can figure out the ideal message, the ideal creative, the best time of day to send, and of course, keeping in mind every piece of context throughout this campaign. Let's go ahead. Should have grabbed a bottle of water before this. Let's go ahead and dive on into insights. So as the name suggests, this is where we're going to glean insights on how our campaign's performing, how our A/B tests doing, which recommendation is most performant in terms of driving revenue or driving engagement. But then I also want to point out the fact that we have support for what we call dashboards. So these dashboards will provide a nice holistic view of my day-to-day metrics, how are things going, as opposed to 6 months ago, 3 months ago, a week ago. And so this is just a nice entry point when you return to the Blueshift dashboard, maybe the following day. But we're going to dive in with some specificity. I want to take a look at how are my campaigns, how are my recommendations performing, and we're going to do that here under the Insights Reports section. So here's an example of a report, drawing your attention to the left-hand side here. We're taking a look at revenue per order. Of course, if I want to take a look at any other of these fundamental metrics, this makes it really simple to do. Any custom events you may have, we can also support. Let's just take a look at revenue. Who doesn't like reviewing revenue? Always impactful. Next step is just choosing the time frame that we want to use. Last 30 days seems good to me, but let's switch it up to 7 days just so we can see how quickly these are generated. And then finally, we're going to choose how we want to group this by. So if I'm comparing recommendations and I want to see, excuse me, and I want to see, I don't know, let's take a look at a compound metric. Let's see click to open rate. And I want to see what is the effect of the recommendation on this click to open rate. I can easily do that just by choosing the appropriate metric and choosing to group it by the recommendations. So here, we're going to see a nice visual form of those recommendations and the click to open rate. And then if I want something a little more tabular, less visual, we're going to see this information also represented down here. So here we can see that my recommendation scheme, abandoned browse, has a much higher CTOR than my top category recommendations. So really simple for me to infer which of my recommendations is most performant across all of these different channels, all these different omni-channel campaigns that I'm leveraging. Beyond that, if I want to see if there's been an uplift leveraging send time optimization, that's also something we can easily take a look at. So here we can see the CTOR for a send time optimized campaign is doing quite a bit better than not having that send time optimization. That's essentially a free lift right there. And then finally, if I want to see this broken down by segment, by campaign author, maybe I want to see, are my campaigns actually performing well relative to other people creating campaigns? These are all easily supported. So that about covers everything inside the platform. So now let's just wrap things up by returning to that PowerPoint real quick. Really apologize. Definitely need some water right now. So now that we're all familiar with how the platform works, let's take a look at some of the key benefits. In general, I hope that that product demo was useful to everyone. If anyone's looking for a more customized, personalized demo, please feel free to reach out after this and we are happy to give you one. So while we focused on how easy it was to construct omni-channel campaigns to intelligently and consistently engage with our users, I now want to provide a little more empirical evidence backing up the importance of some of the things we discussed. So to that end, Blueshift conducted a study of over 14.9 billion messages sent by our current customers. And here are some of the findings of that report, the last one being perhaps the most relevant to today's discussion. So first off, emails triggered in response to a user's behavior are 497% more effective than batch and blast, with a 468% higher click-through rate and a 525% higher conversion rate. Push notifications that are triggered in response to a user behavior are 1,490% more effective than batch and blast, with a 279% higher click-through rate and a 2,700% higher conversion rate. With predictive recommendations, they're 116% more effective than non-predictive recommendations. So when you leverage Blueshift to optimize for revenue or conversions, that's going to be a lot more performant than just saying, if a user has added something to their cart, but they ultimately didn't transact, let's recommend those items. And then the final finding, and the one that most validates everything we've discussed today relating to omni-channel campaigns and driving engagement, omni-channel campaigns are 283% more effective than single channel campaigns, which is to say omni-channel campaigns had a 234% higher click-through rate and a 331% higher conversion rate. These are all of course, staggering figures, and it really drives home the idea that a consistent and coordinated omni-channel campaign across many different channels really is impactful. At the end of this webinar, I'm going to provide all of you with a link to where you can download this trigger-based marketing report from our website. So that concludes everything that I had intended to discuss. I want to thank you all for spending this 30 minutes with me. I hope it was useful, and we're going to wrap things up here. As I mentioned earlier, please feel free to reach out. We would love to hop on a call, discuss some of your needs, some of your challenges, where we think we can add value. And then I can hopefully give you a bit more of a robust demo that's tailored to your organization's needs. So once more, my name is Michael Avtonomoff. Thank you all so much. I hope this is useful, and I hope you all have a great rest of the week and a happy Halloween as well. Bye now.